beautiful crowd here.
Larissa,
Leah, Bat, Zoya.
Why don't you give us like a chizuk farewell?
I'm gonna give me a second. You're all that chizuk. You know they have a lot of Torah anytime show for you. Okay, so give me a second. 1 second.
You're saying I'm bombarding you.
No. First of all, I want to tell you guys. First of all, I want to tell you guys that I love you very, very, very much. I pray for each of you every day, almost without fail. I hope you've seen a lot of blessings in your life since I came here. I know that I have seen unlimited blessings in my life. I really grew up here. You know, sometimes those professional athletes are like, I became a man in Compton, you know? So I really became a man in Forest Hills. I really grew up over here. And I don't think I would have got as much support anywhere else. As much love, unconditional love. And, you know, the truth is there was a time I was teaching in the beginning. Now I could talk about it. I was very depressed and I was in a very bad place. And Benny stuck with me. And Shachar didn't know, but he stuck with me. And a lot of people stuck with me. And I didn't really necessarily know so much at the time. I was not in a good place. And nobody ever left. The one guy was only because he moved and he's back tonight for the last class. So anyway, you guys are very, very special and you're near and dear in my heart. And I tell you this all the time, but we're just beginning. We started something very, very special. You know, it's literally been a year. Last year was Netzach Shebenetzach. And we gave our first class online, which was B'schut Rabbi Nachman ben Fega, that he represents Netzach. It's the same gematria, Nachman and Netzach. Also in Kabbalah, Netzach represents Moshe. We know there's a lot of parallels that Rabbi Nachman himself alludes to about himself with connection to Moshe Rabbeinu, which we're going to speak about again tonight. And that was a year ago we started. And I was so nervous. I was sweating through all my clothes. I remember that first night. At Shachar, I was calling him a million times. We were trying to figure out the whole technology situation. I was running every class. Before the class, Shachar was running to me from his apartment. I was running to him for the phone, yeah. And the setup, oh my gosh, it was a mess. My dad was texting me in the beginning of the class, hey, we can't hear you. I have no Benny. I don't know what's going on, what's happening. Oh, it was such a balagan. But you know what's happened since in 1 year? We've traveled to Chicago. We traveled to Detroit. We've been to Miami. We've been to Uman together in Hanukkah. I was in substance abuse clinics in Florida, spreading the teachings of Rabbi Nachman. We have almost 200 subscribers on YouTube. That's like almost one every 2 days. And those are people who are watching every single class. You have thousands of people who have seen these classes. And we did this together from nothing. We literally, none of us are qualified to make an organization, to run an organization. And Mom is just Mesirat Nefesh. We just pushed it. Some guys made a website. They never made a website. You know, everybody kind of just like, we just pulled together and we've done so many amazing things. And it's been telling you all the good stuff. It's also been very difficult and a lot of challenges and along the way. But you know, the proof of the truth of Rabbi Nachman is Shlomo over here. Look at this guy in the back. He's from Miami, Florida. He came from, like a lot of us, from a very challenging situation. And he's so moved by these teachings. I remember when I was by him, he told me he heard me speak for like an hour and he's like, David, I have to let you know, I never heard somebody speak for an hour straight and I didn't get like bored and like left. And I want to know where you're going to teach like next. I want to hear it. And the truth is, I was just spewing off, you know, Rabbi Nachman stuff. He was sitting in the back and he said, wow, that's amazing. That's deep. He's like writing notes about it. And now he's here. He flew here and he's been in last class here. He's here now. B'ezrat Hashem, he's going to be in Israel soon by yeshiva over there.
B'ezrat Hashem.
Yeah. So
Rabbeinu, it's Siman Tov. How are you? I wish you good luck, my friend.
Thank you, Siman Tov. Thank you so much. So anyway, I feel very, very fortunate, very lucky, and we're just starting the journey, okay? So nobody think, chas v'shalom, that this is the end of anything. This is the beginning of everything. And I know it's hard to believe, but this is part of a life with Rabbi Nachman. He says like this, and the world says like this. He says like this, and it looks like this. Yeah? He says, take an hour out of your day. It's the most important thing you could possibly do. More important than learning, more important than praying, more important than anything. But the world's going to tell you it's shtuyot. Yeah. And he's going to tell you, you can learn even if you don't understand. It's still good for you. Just learn. And they're going to say, no, you got to learn it glot. You got to learn it down cold. And Rabbi Nachman's going to tell you, it's just as important that you learn in Torah as it is that you hang out with your friends and you connect with them about deep things and that you motivate each other to grow spiritually, as it is for you to go to a shiur. And everything that Rabbi Nachman said it's almost, it gets funny after a certain point. So Rabbi Nachman also says that no matter what's going on, you should try to go to Israel. And, sometimes it doesn't make sense, whether it's economical, whether it's, it's scary, it's a big change, it's this, it's that. Rabbi Nachman is very strong language. He says that if anybody tells you not to go to the land for any given reason, even if it sounds like it's a good one, that he's like Bechina of the spies, of the Meraglim. And he meant for any time. And Rav Natan came to him and he gave a lesson about how you have to yearn to live in the land of Israel. And he goes, when you say yearn, you mean I'm yearning in my Hibodadu, but then I go back home? Or I live there? What does yearning mean? He goes, it means like you get a property and you set up and you live your life there. So obviously with COVID, with economy, with all types of reasons, doesn't make sense. And now that we've started this beautiful thing, you might reason intellectually, it doesn't make sense. But my answer is like very simple, and that is every single thing that I've ever done that the Rebbe said has brought us here, and you guys too. And that didn't come from logic. That didn't come from me analyzing my life and figuring out how it fit. It came from complete self-sacrifice and going against what made sense to me. And the reason is very simple, because Rabbi Nachman teaches that we all have a huge pagam. And that pagam is in the powers of our imagination. That we think we know things and we don't know anything. And whatever we think we know is skewed by our taivas, it's skewed by our desires, it's skewed by our broken experiences, it's skewed by our secular education, and the list goes on and on and on. And therefore we can't trust our power of imagination. But Rabbi Nachman promises you that by the end of your time with him, you will have pure powers of imagination. Like Rabbi Nachman says, you will be able to see in your power of imagination what I see in my da'at. What I know, you're going to be able to see through your own powers of imagination. And so this is one of those things. And just interesting. I said last year in my Pesach, I had a very deep hasaga. And it was very late at night, and it was Pesach, and I had this very deep feeling like I have to go to, like now I have to go. And I said to Hashem, please help me to get there by next Pesach. I don't want to say next year in Jerusalem again. And then Pesach came, and I want to be here with you guys, but I was also disappointed that a prayer didn't get answered, and I was disappointed I didn't get there, even though a year is a crazy amount of time, and with COVID, nobody's getting there in a year. And then someone yesterday told me, when are you going? I said, Sunday. He goes, oh, so you're going to get there on Pesach Sheni. And I didn't realize, Hashem has so many ways to answer you, even the Chag you don't know because you're a Baal Tshuva from 5 years ago. So then you get reminded, by the way, it's Pesach Sheni. And it's so much deeper because Pesach is for tzaddikim. The sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, he said that the whole difference between Pesach and Pesach Sheni is the difference between the tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva. How Pesach is 7 or 8 days if you're in Chutz La'aretz. Pesach Sheni is 1 day. Because the whole concept of a Baal Tshuva is that in one moment, his whole entire life flips, right? Everything changes in one moment for that person. And that's Pesach Sheni. And how did it happen? They had holy chutzpah. You think that the Baal Tshuva has to be lucked into it. He has to just fall into it. No, he has to go to Hashem, say, I wasn't ready for the first one. Give me another one. Give me a second Pesach. I wasn't ready for it. And Hashem said, I like it. Here you go. Take a second Pesach. Here's Pesach Sheni for you. It's the Pesach of the Balei Tshuva. So, and obviously we all know that Gematria Pesach is Nachman. It's another very deep, beautiful connection. But and you know what's funny? I got the list. My wife showed me. They came out with the list of the people on the airplane. There's like 100 people from a million families. They put me number one on the list. First one on there, my family. And it wasn't in alphabetical order. And I really like felt almost like Hashem was saying, like, don't worry, I got you. And this is for all of us. Hashem is saying, don't worry, I got you. You just gotta let him take you. You have to believe it. And Hashem is never gonna let you down, okay? So let's finish the lesson. You ready? Okay, there's a pasuk from Tehillim. Daniel already know it. What is it? No, I'm just kidding. He subdues people under us and nations beneath our feet. He chooses our heritage for us, the pride of Yaakov, Gaon of Yaakov, whom he loves. Okay, good. So now Rabbi Nachman says like this. This is the explanation. By the way, I only have one contact in. So if you see me making weird faces, it's not because I have something on my stomach. It's because I can only see out of one eye right now. So this is זה פירוש. ידבר עמים תחתינו לאומים תחת רגלינו. זה בחינת חירק. נקודה תחתונה של א'. That we know that Rabbi Nachman has shown that the entire essence of Teshuvah is the letter Aleph. The entire essence of creation, according to the Kabbalists and the Hasidic masters, is the letter Aleph. So we see here that what's the concept of this lowest point, which we have said so far, is silence, domeh, not to respond when life is kicking you in the you-know-what, and when people are embarrassing you and making you feel like you-know-what, and you're not responding to any of these you-know-what. You're silent. Why? Because you believe that this is from Hashem. You believe that this is from Hashem. Rabbi Nachman says that's the beginning of real teshuvah. If you could be silent. This is the letter, the bottom of the letter Aleph, that's the chirik, the little dot in the bottom. Now, you see it in the pasuk. Why? Because it says, Yedaber amim tachtenu, the nations underneath us, ulumim tachat raglenu, underneath our feet. Yeah? So this is the concept of the lower part of the Aleph. This is like va'aretz adom raglai. Like Hashem says that the physical world is my footstool. And like we said, and Rabbi Nachman says, that what's the word hadom raglai? That really the stool of my foot, dome, is linguistically similar to dam, blood, like we learned in the beginning. Also, dome, silent. Meaning the key to accessing Hashem down here is silence. And this is why it says in Pirkei Avot that the gate to wisdom is silence. Because silence, the first point, it's also the last point. We gave some practical examples about how to access deeper understandings of situations in our life by being silent instead of Yivchar lanu et nachatenu. Hashem has chosen for us our heritage. Ze bechinat Moshe. Our heritage is the concept of Moshe. So this is very deep. You ready? Bechinat nakuda hal Yonah Aleph. Moshe is the higher point of the Aleph. We learned earlier that the lower point of the Aleph, the concept of silence, the concept of Mesirat Nefesh, the concept of subduing yourself and humbling yourself to something greater than you, is the whole essence of Yoshua ben Nun. And why did he merit to be the leader of the Jewish people and to actually conquer, we're going to see in a moment, Amalek, and destroy our enemy, take us into the land of Israel? All because of his hikashru to Moshe Rabbeinu, to the Tzaddik Yisod Olam. That the Torah says that he always stood by the foot of his tent. Yeah, he was always by his tent. He never left his tent. So Moshe is the upper point. He's what's called Keter Malchut. He's called the crown. And this is the reason as well, I think, why, let's say you read Rabbi Nachman's biography, or when you read Rav Natan's biography, you're going to see you don't feel like you relate to Rabbi Nachman's life at all. And you're going to see that you feel like you relate to every single part of Rav Natan's life. Because this entire Torah was actually given by Rabbi Nachman to Rav Natan, which at the time, Rav Natan didn't actually know it. But Rabbi Nachman was saying that you're my Yoshua ben Nun, and I'm your Moshe Rabbeinu, and we're going to bring Geula. Okay? And he was showing him, though, that he was the lower point, and he was the higher point. And actually, he used this Torah his whole entire life, because we saw, if you read, and everybody should read through Fire and Water. Anybody here who's ever read a Jewish book, you read Jewish books and you haven't read through Fire and Water, this will be the best Jewish book you ever read. It's mamish like a movie.
I have it in my house. I never read it.
Yeah, you should read it. It's unbelievable. You got to just start it. You're not going to put it down.
Really?
There was a student here, 10-year-old.
Yeah.
He told me, he's like, I don't know why you gave me this book. I literally couldn't put it down. I didn't sleep last night because I was reading the whole thing. You're gonna feel like it's about you.
Really? I think that not that story.
Okay. So this higher point, this is umima al rakia demut kisei. That what was above the rakia is the concept of a kisei. It's the concept of a throne. The chiso keshemesh, because the throne is like the sun. And the Gemara says, Penei Moshe kifnei chama. His face, the face of Moshe, was like the face of the sun. Also, we can track this back to the first Torah we did together, because we saw that there's two modes of experience, just like we're talking in this Torah, that there's two modes of experience. Very good, Yaakov and David. That there's a concept of Yaakov, that is everything's going well in your life, and you have to look for Hashem in it. You have to look to understand the situation. That's like the sun, that's like Moshe Rabbeinu. But we have like the moon, that when you can't see what's going on, when you can't understand, that Rabbi Nachman says, and this is his chiddush, but Davka, then stop trying to understand. You need to turn your mind off, and like Rav Natan says famously, you need to throw out your mind completely. He says, Gamor, you can't let one little bit of your own intelligence remain behind, otherwise you're going to come to a false conclusion. And you have to make yourself like David or like the moon. Now in the Gemara, they give the same exact mashal of Yaakov and David for Moshe and Yoshua. So you see the same exact parallel. Like it says, Rabbi Shimon Omer. So listen, this is the whole entire essence of tonight's lesson. Nachala zos Shiloh. It says in the Gemara and in Masechet Zavachim that the inheritance that the Torah speaks about that Hashem gave to us is Shiloh. What does Shiloh have to do with an inheritance? So we know that when the Jewish people made the Ohel Moed, which used to be transportable, but ultimately they got to Eretz Yisrael. And where did they put the Ohel Moed for hundreds of years? In a city called Shiloh. Okay, beautiful. So that's our inheritance. Why? Because the Ohel Moed ultimately is kind of like the Mishkan. The Mishkan became the Beit HaMikdash. It's our inheritance. Very good. But it's much deeper than that, because we know that Rabbi Nachman is teaching here that the ability for Yoshua to connect to Moshe, for us to connect to the Rebbe, is to be by the tent. Because the line in the middle of the Aleph, the Vav, represents the tent. Just like Rabbi Nachman teaches that Hashem spread out the sky like a tent, so too Yoshua, he stood by Moshe's tent. The concept of Shemayim is the concept of Moshe's Torah. So when we learn Rabbi Nachman's Torah, it's like we're by his tent. Okay? Now, where the tent was, this is called Shiloh. Now, Rabbi Nachman brings a Zohar, which we reference constantly, that is Shiloh da Moshe. The Zohar says that, what is this inheritance? It's Moshe. Moshe himself is the inheritance. The Tzaddik Emet was the inheritance who was given to every single Jew, whoever can make space in his heart to be able to attach themselves to someone so wondrous, to someone who cares for you, to someone who will never lead you wrong, but is going to constantly push you to grow, to move you beyond your comfort zone, to move you into places you never imagined, but you can hold on to him like an inheritance. He's never going to steal you wrong, because Moshe is Shiloh. Now, what's the deeper aspect of this? We know that there's the pasuk in the Torah where we see Shiloh for the first time. When Yaakov Avinu is giving a bracha to Yehuda, and he signals to him that Mashiach is going to come through Yehuda. And he says, when's Mashiach going to come? Ad Yavo Shiloh. Not until Shiloh comes. Rashi says, who's Shiloh? Rashi writes there, Melech HaMashiach, the King Mashiach. Shiloh is a code word for Mashiach. Comes the Zohar to say, did you notice that the gematria of Shiloh is the same gematria as Moshe? Which is to hint to you that what was Yaakov telling Yehuda, that there is going to be a soul which comes from you, was going to be the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. He's going to be the Mashiach. But it's only going to be the soul, because we know who's the body of Yehuda going to be? David, Ben David. He has to come from Yehuda. But they teach in Kabbalah and Chassidut, it's going to be the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu, though. Okay? This is our inheritance. It's Mashiach. Moshe. Shiloh's Moshe. Et Gaon Yaakov. And what about the Gaon Yaakov? Ze bechinat vav shebetoch aleph. This is the vav that's in the middle of the aleph. Bechinat ohel. It's the concept of the tent. Bechinat or. It's the concept of light. That Yaakov is the concept of light, because Yaakov is the concept of the Torah. The Torah is or. Shemoshe me'ir la Yoshua, because the whole entire concept of Moshe being able to connect to Yoshua, because on paper, where do us and Rabbi Nachman connect? Where is that meeting point? There's no meeting point. We live in 2021. You have seen whatever you've seen. You've experienced whatever you experienced. And even though when we read Rabbi Nachman's Torah, we feel like he's speaking to us, that's Badavka in his Torah. But if you saw his life, there's no meeting point. There's no meeting point. So what is the meeting point? It's the Ohel, Yaakov. That's the Torah. His Torah is the Vav. That's where we meet him, and that's the tent. And the word Ohel also comes from the word, and it's similar to the word Hilo. Whoever's phone that is, if you can.
It's a sound that's coming from nowhere.
I find that hard to believe.
I think there's something, you're right.
Okay. Like the Pasuk says, Yaakov ish tam yoshev ohalim. That Yaakov is constantly dwelling in the tents. Meaning to say that Yaakov is the essence of that vav in between. If you want to, Torah. If you want to see the meeting place between Moshe and Yoshua, you have to learn from Yoshua. What did he do? He never left his tent. Who else didn't leave tents? Yaakov.
The Torah was 6 hands, but wide by 6 hands.
6 by 6. Very good. Beautiful. But the Gemara said the Torah was 6 by 6, which conceptually, according to the Sfirot, is the concept of that vav in the middle. Okay. Now listen to this. We know that the Torah says that we have an eternal enemy. We have an enemy. This enemy is constantly looking to knock us out. He's constantly looking to cool us down. He's constantly looking to make our lives miserable and to make us feel confused and sad and angry and anxious. His name is Amalek, and we're more familiar with him than we are with our friends, because he is constantly in our masks. He's constantly bothering us, and you don't even realize. Okay, now listen to this, because it's very deep. There's a Gemara in Maseches Sanhedrin, and Rabbi Nachman is going to explain it. You ready? It says like this. Rabbi Yehuda says, upon entering Eretz Yisrael, upon entering the Holy Land, you need to do 3 things. Hashem says the Jewish people need to take care of 3 matters. 1, you need to appoint a king. You need to choose who's the king of Israel. Number 2, you need to kill off Amalek. You need to kill off Amalek. Number 3, these are all obviously very small. You need to build the Beit HaMikdash. Easy, right? Rabbi Yehuda says we got to do 3 things. As soon as the Jewish people are taken back to the land of Israel, and we cannot do anything else before we do these 3 things. No plof, no baksh, no hot foods, no coffees, no shashlik. Well, I don't know about that one. I don't think Hashem would be so cruel. You have to take care of these 3 things. You got to find out who's the king. You have to anoint him. You have to kill off Amalek, and you have to build the Beit HaMikdash. Okay. Now Rabbi Nachman is going to show how these 3 steps are the 3 parts of the letter Aleph, and it's everything that we've learned so far in this Torah. You guys excited? You guys pumped? Nobody?
Yes.
Thank God. Okay. The one guy who's subdued by the mask.
Came from Jersey.
Thank God. Baruch Hashem. Okay. Zebechina yadber amim tachtenu. He spoke to the nations underneath us. Meaning what?
From Moshe from the mountain.
Umanot lahem melech. That you need to appoint a king. Oh, sorry. I messed it up. The concept of subduing the enemies beneath us, this is the concept of killing off Amalek. So Rabbi Nachman is flipping up the order. Now, lest you think to yourself, well, maybe it's an error and he got it wrong because he's flipping it. It's interesting because Rabbi Yehuda says in the Gemara, at the end of this Gemara, though I don't know which one comes first. He doesn't know which of these three we have to do first, but it sounds like what from Rabbi Nachman saying, he does know which one we have to do first. We have to kill off Amalek. What does that represent? That represents everything that's afflicting us in our lives. All of our doubts, all of our confusions, all of our personal shtuyot, all of our family stuff, all of our...
Right, before you get closer to Hashem, you have to figure out what gets you far from Hashem.
Oh, very good. So Amalek,
First step.
you have to kill him.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we had Shaul tried to kill Amalek because he didn't. That brought along Mashiach, so to speak. And then Mikdash was built after that.
Oh, very good.
I guess.
Nice connection. Beautiful.
Just-
Yeah, so we have to kill Amalek first. So now in our personal lives, what does Amalek represent?
Doubt.
Doubts. Very good. This guy has internalized the Hasidic message that the Baal Shem Tov says, Amalek Gamatria Safek is a doubt. And interestingly, in the Torah, which we know the essence of anything in the world comes from the Torah, how many times does the word Safek come up in the Torah? Doubt. 0. Never once does the word Safek, doubt, come up in the Torah. So what does that tell you about doubts?
Not really.
They don't exist. There's no place.
So you're creating your own doubts.
Oh, you know what Rav Natan said when he entered the land of Israel, which is very connected to this? He went there only because his Rebbe told him he should go. So he goes to the land and it was crazy and he went through an insane tests and difficulties and challenges to get there. He gets to the land and he says something so sweet. He said, I had so many maniot, I had so many obstacles, but you know what the greatest one was? The ones of my own mind. The ones of my own mind. Safek. When you get to the land of Israel, you're going to have to slaughter him because you can't live in Israel and also have doubts. Because I want you to understand as well that the land of Israel is not just a physical place.
It's a mental space.
It's a mental space.
That's what's a third world country.
There's a big Kiddush. The land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, as opposed to the other lands, represents Eretz Kedusha, the land of Elokut. Meaning it's a space of godliness. It's a space of pure godliness. This is Eretz Yisrael. That's why it says in the Gemara, there's 3 things that can only come through suffering. One of them is Olam Haba, which is all the good that Hashem is waiting for us. One of them is the Torah, which we know the Zohar says is one with Hashem. So Hashem is the Torah. So you have Hashem and you have Olam Haba. And then this land called the land of Israel. What's so great about the land of Israel? The answer is that this land is the land of godliness. This is a land that is pure Elokus. That's why it says that the land throws up its inhabitants. Because if you're not holding in a certain place, it'll throw you up.
Yeah, because you're supposed to live in the land.
Yeah.
You live there, but you're living in a different mindset.
Yeah.
Not
So
living in
you
the
have to.
land.
So you have to kill off Amalek. One of the benefits of being in Chutz La'aretz is you can run away from your stuff. But when you go to the land of Israel, when you go to Hashem, there's no more running away from your stuff.
You're required to continue.
And this is why so many people, when they become Baal Tshuva, they start to experience their greatest difficulties. And they start to confront things inside of themselves that they never wanted to. The reason is because when you enter to the land of Israel, which is really a code word for Hashem, when you enter into the domain of Kedusha, into the field of holiness, so you have to kill Amalek. And Amalek is no joke. Okay? Now, then we have Gaon Yaakov. That's the next part of the pasuk. Bechinat Darach Kochab Yaakov. In the Parsha Balak, there's a very famous pasuk there, and all of the Hasidic masters say it's referring to Mashiach, that there is a star that's going to go forth from Yaakov. I have a chiddush, by the way, on this. The first word, derech, darach, I'm going to tell you at the end, okay? But darach kochab Yaakov, that the star went out from Yaakov. Who's the star that's going to go out from Yaakov? So it's Mashiach, and this is what he says here, Bechinat Melech. This is the king, okay? The star that comes out. Now, by the way, it's very interesting. Why? Because as opposed to the sun and the moon, which we constantly learn about, what about the star? How is the star different from the sun and the moon?
It dies out.
It dies out. All good. So it has to come back to life. It's going to come out of death. It's very good.
There was a vision
How is it different than the sun and the moon?
because it's in the dark.
Because it's completely in the dark. And it shines really bright.
Yeah.
It shines really bright.
So where does it get its light from? Like the moon gets the light from the sun sun gets the light from Hashem, whatever that means. What about the star?
Oh, so you're gonna see, okay? Believe note lahem beit habechira, and they're gonna build there the house of choice, meaning the Beit Hamikdash. Ze bechinat Moshe. That Moshe is the living embodiment of the Beit Hamikdash. Bechinat da'at, like the Arizal HaKadosh teaches that Moshe Rabbeinu is the living manifestation of God consciousness. He is da'at. He is called knowing Hashem. Like it says, Misha yesh bo deya, who that there is in him deya, that he has da'at, he knows Hashem. Ki'ilu nivna Beit HaMikdash biyamav. It's as if he built the Beit HaMikdash in his days.
So Mashiach said for him.
So, right, Mashiach's already there with him. Moshe's already there with him. Whoever he has da'at, it's like the Beit HaMikdash is built for him in his days. Okay? Choose for us our inheritance. Okay? So right now, this is the end of Lashon Rabbeinu, meaning that Rabbi Nachman has ended what he writes in the lesson. But Rav Natan is going to end us home with some tremendous chizuk. Okay? Shlomo, you should hear this. Get Shlomo over here. Shlomo, you should hear this. This is going to be good. No, you're not allowed to do that. Rav Natan says like this. By the way, it's a beautiful story how this even happened. Usually you never get Rav Natan at the end of a Torah in Kutumaran. After he was finished with this Torah, which was in the time of Elul, then by Purim, he was speaking, Rabbi Nachman was speaking this specific Torah over with his student Rav Natan. And he told Rav Natan, I want you to tell me what you think about it. He said, me? What do you mean what I think about it? He goes, I want to know your thoughts on this Torah. So he said, okay, I have to think about it. He was nervous. So he went home and he spent a lot of time thinking about his thoughts. He came back to Rabbi Nachman. He told him his thoughts on the Torah. He said, they're good. I like it. Keep going. And this was the first time that Rav Natan ever wrote down Chidushim on Rabbi Nachman's Torah, which we know turned into Likutei Halachot. It turned into Kitzur, Likutei Moran. It turned into everything. All starting right here. You ready for his first Chidushim, Rav Natan? Beautiful way to end, no? So he says like this. The Yomar Shem al Moshe. Shem says to Moshe, Kara et Yoshua. Speak to Yoshua. Summon Yoshua. Or as Sajid Gaon says, appoint Yeshua. Appoint him.
Like the point. Like literally that point.
Yes. Very good, Danny. Moshe hu nekuda el Yona. Because Moshe is the higher transcendent point. The Yoshua hu nekuda tachtona. Yoshua is the little point on the bottom. So you have Yoshua, you have the line, and you have Moshe on top. V'yatzvu be'ohel. Present yourselves in the Ohel Moed. Ze bechinat harakia. This is the concept of Shemayim. Bechinat Vav. This is the concept of the Vav and the Aleph. That what happens when you're silent in the face of criticism? What do you feel? Embarrassed. And when you feel embarrassed, what happens to your face? Rabbi Nachman says, changes colors. So the Gemara says in Masechet Hagiga that Shemayim is a mixture of colors. It's a mixture of fire and water. So too, when you get embarrassed, what happens to your face? It becomes like that. So it's the Vav. Where I will appoint him, via tzavenu. Ki Moshe hayat tarich az limsor kol Yoshua. It was then necessary for Moshe to hand everything over to Yoshua. So if you think about it so deep, because this whole thing is Rabbi Nachman telling Rav Natan, even after not knowing him for so long, I am giving you the whole thing. I'm giving you everything to give over until Mashiach comes. This is going to be the fire that's going to bring the Mashiach. It was then necessary for Moshe to hand everything over to Yoshua. The Ein Shel Tom Bayom HaMavet. But he brings a very famous pasuk from Kohelet. There's no authority in the day of death. Meaning that Moshe wanted to choose Yoshua, but Hashem took away his malchut when he died. Because the tzaddik, when he passes away, he loses his malchut. So what is where I will appoint him? Ki b'sha'at istakut tzaddik, because when a tzaddik departs from this world, ein lo shlita b'koach. He has no authority. He has no koach. La'ir liYoshua. He has no ability to illuminate Yoshua anymore because he died. Al ken diyek v'yatzvenu, and therefore specifically v'yatzvenu. Ani be'atzmi, meaning Hashem was saying, I'm going to appoint him. That is to say something very deep. Ki chazra hamemshala lakadosh baruch hu. That I myself, because where did the Malchut go when Moshe died? It went back to Hashem. So Hashem has to give it to Yoshua. So who's the one who appointed Yoshua? It wasn't even Moshe. It was Hashem. It was Hashem.
Because Moshe passed away.
Right, because Moshe passed away. Very good. So what are we learning here? Something very beautiful, because a lot of us, including myself, feel very lonely. You know, we have this Rabbi. We've been learning his teachings now for 4 years, and some of you longer than that. And we're really, we learn it seriously. We did 4 days a week for a long time. We do 3 days a week now for a couple of years, plus the classes in the morning. You guys are doing Hibodedut in the fields, in the forest, in your bedrooms, in your closets, hanging on the walls. You guys are serious Hasidim. And yet we never got to speak to the Rebbe. We never got to cry on his shoulder. We never got to tell him our deepest, darkest secrets and ask for help. I'm serious. We did. But not while he was alive.
Not the same.
Not the same. But Rabbi Nachman is telling us in this Torah, don't worry. Because Hashem's gonna be your guide at the end.
That means you're gonna be the star in the dark.
You're gonna be the star in the dark. Exactly. You're gonna be the star in the dark. And he was really telling Rav Natan, you're not gonna have me for the whole show. Yeah, you're not gonna have anything. And that's weird for him, because at this point he thinks he's gonna have Rabbi Nachman the rest of his life. And Rabbi Nachman was telling him right then and there, actually, you're gonna have me only for a little bit. And then you're gonna have to do the whole thing just with Hashem. Okay? So for all of us that we think it's not enough, it might be just what the doctor ordered. So just as chizuk for all of us, that in this final exile that we all kind of feel lonely. We don't feel like we found our Rebbe. We don't feel. So our Rebbe ourselves is telling us, don't worry, this is the way it's supposed to be. And this is what we need. Yeah, beautiful, no? Okay. Now I'm just gonna read this part in English, because this is from Rav Natan, and this is just a good way to end the lesson. And it really goes to the whole entire essence of Rabbi Nachman, of Rav Natan, of everything that we're doing here. And hopefully you'll go back to your life with a lot of tremendous chizuk, and you should always remember this and keep this in your heart. And now Rav Natan says, come and see and understand how fantastically awesome everything Rabbi Nachman says is. For there it's explained that a person who wants to do teshuvah, he must have 2 types of expertise. He needs to know how to run, and he needs to know how to return. This is the aspect of ascending and descending. Like the Baal Shem Tov says, for every single ascent, you must need a descent. So Rabbi Nachman comes and say, okay, great. So now I need to know how to do both. Because ascending is fun, but descending is no fun. And who says that ascending, I even know what I'm doing when I'm ascending? So we need to be baki. We need to be an expert in both. If I ascend to heaven, David HaMelech says, you're there. I need to be an expert in that. That's called running. And if I make my bed in hell, here you are. Here you are. This is like the best diuk of Rabbi Nachman. Hashem's right here. There in heaven, you're somewhere over there. But in hell, you're right here. You're right here. This is the expertise of returning. We need to be an expert at this. So Rav Natan says like this. The simple meaning of all of this is that a person who wants to walk the pathways of Hashem, he wants to walk the pathways of Kedusha. He wants to really mamish do teshuvah. He must summon up all of his guts and his fortitude, and he must constantly strengthen himself in the ways of Hashem, whether he's in a state of spiritual ascent or descent, whether he's in, if I ascend to heaven, there you are, or if I made a bed in hell, here you are. In other words, if he's experiencing an ascent and a high spiritual level, he can't remain there and he can't be satisfied with this. Rather, he must be extremely expert at pushing himself, knowing and believing that he must go further and further, and there is no limit. This is the expertise of running, which corresponds if I ascend to heaven. Meaning to say, why did Rabbi Akiva go up and he was the only one who came back down in peace? Because the rest of them thought they reached the apex. Yeah. They thought that was God. And that's why one of them became a heretic after. But Rabbi Akiva, who's the Baal Tshuva, he was an expert at running and returning. And he understood that when he went up to Shemayim, there is no such thing as the end. There's no such thing as I reached my peak. In sports, sometimes you reach your peak at 25, sometimes 28, sometimes 30. There's no such thing spiritually. Yeah, Rav Kanievsky right now, he's going higher. This is the whole essence of being a Jew. There's no such thing as I capped out. And when you're feeling like you're elevating spiritually, Rabbi Nachman says the ikar of being an expert in that moment is to know you have more in you. Okay? The opposite's also true. If, God forbid, I fall to wherever I fall, even, he says, into the deepest hell, you must still never give yourself over to despair, but you must constantly seek and search for Hashem no matter where you are. No matter where you are, he says, you need to strengthen yourself with every means available. And I'm telling you this, he means it literally. I can't tell you how many times in my car I had to cry in my Hibodedut, scream in my Hibodedut, sing in my Hibodedut, clap in my Hibodedut, dance in my Hibodedut, twist, turn, ride, whatever it needed to take to be besimcha. Rabbi Nachman says that to be happy is the hardest thing in the world to do. And yet he says it's a mitzvah gedola to be besimcha tamid. Okay? That means that you're going to have to pull out all the stops. Just like, when we see people succeed in the financial world, in the business world, and you see they have crazy stories about how they pulled this and they did this, you have to do the same thing for simcha. Whatever it takes to be happy. Yeah? Even if it's crazy. No matter what you do. Rabbi Nachman said that I lived a life that was full, and I know how important it is to be happy, and I've come to the realization after my life that it's impossible to be happy every day, except unless you act foolish every day. He actually says, unless you act like an idiot.
No problems here.
You have to act stupid.
I'm not acting.
There's a time for everything. There's a time for everything, okay? So whatever it takes that you should be besimcha. Because even if you find yourself in the deepest hell, Rav Natan says, it's possible there too to attach yourself to Hashem. This corresponds to, and if I make my bed in hell, here you are. This is the expertise of returning. For it's impossible to walk the pathways of teshuvah unless one's an expert in both. And that famous story I just said before, but for me, this is the most gewaldic story. And obviously, as a devoted chassid of Rabbeinu, it's even sweeter that when they came to Rav Natan and told him, this Torah that you're teaching people, it's mamish apikorsis, and you're going to end up in Gehenna. You're going to end up in hell. So he looked back and he smiled. He said, it's okay, because I'm going to take my Likutim around with me and I'm going to turn Gehenna into Gan Eden. And this is the whole essence of being a chassid. This is the whole essence of the Baal Shem Tov. This is the whole essence where Rabbi Nachman came to tell us. Ein shum yeush ba'olamcha. That hell can be heaven. Hell can be heaven. And hell is heaven. If you have the eyes to see it, if you have the heart to feel it. And this is our hope. And this is our inheritance. This is mamish our inheritance. What would we have done without Rabbi Nachman? How would you have ever gotten out of that place? How would I have ever, not only that, sometimes they'll try to, I remember when I was seeing therapists or in the psych ward, one day you're going to be able to live a functional, mediocre life.
You use the word mediocre?
No, I edited it, but it was implied. It's implied. One day you're going to be a functional member of society. I'm like, that sounds like that sucks. I don't want to be a functional member of society. I want to be a rock star. No, I want to do something cool, I want to tap out whatever potential I have. But that's the, and then you read Rabbi Nachman and he says, there's mamash Hashem there. You could turn into Gan Eden. There's a purpose for you being there. So this is our inheritance. It's mamash a gift. You should know that Rabbi Nachman's the biggest gift in the world. And he says Rabbeinu was very precise in referring to the concept of being baki, because he says here that if you take the word baki and you times it by 2, it spells derech. He says that you cannot be a master in the path of teshuvah unless you're baki in these 2 things. And he says that if you take baki and you times it by 2, then you have derech. So this is the whole derech. That bridge, that narrow bridge that Rabbi Nachman is helping us cross You can't cross it if you can't go up and down. Because when we see the picture of the bridge, we think it's just a narrow, straight bridge. But it's really up and down and up and down. We have to be able to do both. And we will end with this. There is a very Rav Natan, he loved the Zamra. I mean, all you have to do is see Likutei Halachot and see the beginning, and you'll see that he loves the Zamra because it's the first thing that he talks about, and he keeps talking about it and talking about it and talk. You think a Zamra is going to end, and the whole beginning of Likutei Halachot is just a Zamra in this way, a Zamra in that way, a Zamra in this way. And Abraham was obviously machavin to the importance of this because he spoke about it last night as his first topic for teaching, and he did a beautiful job. Listen to the class. Shag, just 1 second. We'll finish in 1 second. Now listen to how Rav Natan ends his Torah, and then we'll finish up if you guys have any questions, okay? It's explained above that by means of the quiet and silence that you display when your friend, when your Jewish brother insults you, that you merit tshuva. This is what Rav Nachman is teaching us. And this is the concept of the keter. This is because silence is the fence for wisdom, meaning it's the crown for wisdom. Because it's necessary to be very careful, Rav Natan says, to judge everyone favorably. So how does a Zamra have to do with being silent?
Because
Not seeing the bad in me.
How do you be silent? He's giving you the secret here. It's like, okay, great. I would love to have been silent every time somebody insulted me. So why couldn't I?
Being silent in the heart also, that you don't feel some type of way about
Yeah, so how do you
him saying to you or about you feeling anything
bad notes.
Oh, you don't play the bad notes. So listen to Rav Natan says. Because even when others attack and insult you,
still a shame.
you need to judge them favorably and maintain his silence. And he literally is going to give an example about how to do it, which is beautiful. This forms the aspect of keter, because there's no keter without a kaf. And this is why specifically it says you need to judge him le-kaf schut, he says. Le-kaf schut. The kaf, yeah, the concept of judging favorably, he says this is the keter mamish. He says, understand this. You need to understand this, because this is a zamra. How are you going to be able to silence when a person's making fun of you, saying negative things to you, putting you down? You need to have the keter in your back pocket and judge him favorably, because la kaf schut. The Zohar says there is no keter without a kaf. And he says, what is that kaf? It's a kaf schut. Like the Midrash says, there's an allegory for someone. Actually, Yosef Carduna made a song out of this. So after the Omer is over, or the Rabbi, the Lag BaOmer comes up, you guys should listen to this song. It's a beautiful song. It's called Mashal. It's based on this Midrash. It's like the allegory of someone who saw his friend making a keter, a crown. Who is it for? He asked him. It says, Bishvil HaMelech. It's for the king. He says, since it's for the king, set into it every jewel you find. He says, so too, every Jew is an aspect of a keter, of a crown for Hashem. That every single Jewish neshama is a keter, is a crown for Hashem. One must therefore see to it that he sets in him every sort of jewel one can possibly find. Yes, every good point. How sweet is it that you guys are all diamond dealers and you guys are mamish living this midrash. You just need to do it with Jews in addition to on 47th Street.
They always do it with Jews.
Every Jew is an aspect of a crown. One must therefore set in him every sort of jewel one can possibly find. That is, it's necessary to make an effort to seek out and search for every schut, every merit, every positive quality one can possibly find in your fellow Jew. Everyone must be judged favorably because they are an aspect of the Keter of Hashem. We find then that by judging them favorably, you're going to be able to remain silent when they insult you. He finds some merit in the person and he says to him like this. So listen, this is Rav Natan's dialogue in his own head. He's not all that responsible for shaming me because to that person's knowledge and his way of thinking, it really seems like I do deserve this. This is an unbelievable, deep.
Also, he's empathetic with
Yeah, he's empathizing with him.
Wow.
According to however he thinks about me right now, he must. He's right. Because that's what he thinks.
Right.
That's what he feels. So whatever's happened to him in his life, no.
The truth of truth.
No.
It's just his truth.
Yeah, it's his truth. He's empathizing with his. It's.
Wow. So that quality, when you reach empathy for being schnitzed on, that's called tshuva.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he's what you said?
Rav Natan is saying like somebody's insulting him, and he's saying to himself, "Oh my gosh, this person, according to what he knows, I really am that horrible thing."
And that in essence is going to cause you to do teshuva
Why?
because you made someone, quote unquote, feel that you did something, you wronged him in a way. And if when you're humble and you realize that, like, wow, my gosh, I'm sorry, Hashem, I have to do better.
It's gonna move you closer to Hashem.
Yeah, it's not gonna be the opposite.
No, but when you do what you just said,
Yeah.
and you're empathizing, you take your ego out of it, so you can't. There's nothing to be upset about. You're not
Right.
upset about it.
Not so you just want to get closer to Hashem.
Right. That's the whole
He's
point.
right.
That's the catcher. That's the crown. There's no ego there. So how do you do that? Through empathy. Rabbi Nachman says the key to everything is empathy.
Focus on his pain.
Focus on him. I remember I did this once. I haven't read this in years. And I remember I was with somebody, I'm not gonna say who it was. And they said, and they were just like going into me, railing into me. And instead of feeling, like I normally would, why are you saying this? X, Y, and Z, da, da, da. I literally sat down on the couch and I started thinking to myself, oh my gosh, what had to happen to that person that they feel so intensely? They must have been through so much to feel so intensely about this when nothing's going on. And I actually started to feel bad for them. And then I started to love them so much more. There was like an influx of love that came inside of me. It just like poured inside of me even more. So this is the beautiful lesson that we're learning here. And he says, understand what I just said. Understand this. And the example that they give on the bottom here is David HaMelech, who's the perfect example of the king, right? That King David, he fled from his son Avshalom. He passed through Bachurim, a Benjaminite, by the name of Shimi, the son of Gera. Yeah. he came to curse him. Most people, they do these things after they have a really good chiddush. He has like a really like twisted joke, and then he like, I love it when you call me Rav Pop. You guys used to what he said. Thank God the rabbi here had no idea what you're talking about. He's like, wow, he's really into the Gemara. Okay.
I don't remember that.
Okay, so what happened? He came out, he cursed David. So Avishai was the king's nephew, who's a powerful warrior, and he asked for permission to kill Shemi. And David said to him, it's an open pasuk, Hashem must have told him to curse me. Because this was the whole level of David.
But it still hurts.
Yes, but ultimately you can get to the point that even it doesn't hurt because you realize Mom is just Hashem. And why is it so beautiful that it's David at the end? He also, very interestingly, by the Shpoel Zeder, he doesn't say any negative remarks about it. He doesn't even say I'm upset. When he started to speak out against him, he made like this kind of response, like it's unfortunate that Hashem chose him. That was like what he said, not having anything to do with him. Like it was him. Like somebody had to be chosen for this. It's unfortunately had to be him. It's very interesting. Okay, so why David? Because he's the lower point. He's the moon. So this is us, and this is a very interesting thing. And this is the end. People ask me all the time, why is it that you see that Bali Tshuva or people who have been in such dark places, they're the ones who connect to Rabbi Nachman, and it's harder for people who haven't been through so much too. And the truth is, it's in this Torah. Because Rabbi Nachman's teaching that the key to being able to experience Moshe is to be in the tent. And to be in the tent, you need to be embarrassed. To be in the tent, you need to go through darkness. You need to have suffered a lot. And every single time that you suffer,
intense.
Yeah, you're intense.
He said,
yeah, I know. That doesn't make any sense. Okay. Whenever you suffer, and it's too intense, then you're in the tent. And then all of a sudden, the light of Rabbi Nachman can shine into you. The sign of Moshe, the light of Moshe can shine into you. Okay? Everybody, any questions? Have a good night. You guys, I already prayed, but
questions?
wait, any questions before we go break?
Everyone sit down.
1 second. Any questions before we head off? Anybody online? Anybody here? Do you have a question or a statement? Give me a question. Come on.
You want a good question?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so wait 1 second. Anybody online have a question? Yes.
I mean, that was a question.
Exactly. That's why I asked.
No questions? Any questions?
The
Nothing?
last class, no one has any questions.
Silence.
I'm thinking.
Oh, we mechavim.
When you're returning,
Yeah.
He's gonna jump.
Guys,
practically, how do you find
check this guy.
how do you find Hashem? Because when you're returning, especially after you've been running,
Yeah.
it can be a very dark place.
Yeah.
It's very hard to stay out of despair.
Right.
How do I find Hashem when it feels like when it feels like you're almost too ashamed to even look for him?
Right. Very good. So in that moment, B'davka, so the question was for anybody online or for anyone who's going to watch this class, says, when I'm returning practically, that moment is very intense. And the last thing that you want to do is even look for Hashem because you feel almost too ashamed to, too embarrassed to because of whatever you've done or whatever you're going through. So what do you practically do to hold your ground and get back up to running again? So Rabbi Nachman says in a very famous Torah in the second part of the Likutei Moharan, it's in that very moment that you have to say, yeah, where are you? You have to force yourself to say, where are you?
Yeah.
Where are you? Where are you? And we're learning from this Torah, that the key is not to leave the Ohel of Moshe. Open up Likutei Halachot, open up Likutei Moharan, force yourself to open it up, even though you feel horrible. And there's a good chance you're going to see where Hashem is. I can tell you for myself, without this sefer, I would never have found Hashem in any of these dark moments in my life. And like I think Benia said, it's probably a quote from somewhere else, but Hipodadut is like when you talk to Hashem, and this Torah is like when Hashem speaks back to you. So if you go into your Hipodadut, and you pour your heart out, you say, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Hashem, please help me to see you, help me to know you. Help that this next piece of Torah that I look from my Rabbi, that by going into the tent, I'm going to see your light there. And visit Hashem, Hashem should show it. Okay.
I have a question after him.
Person speaking, but something's really bothering me.
Yeah.
It's like cry out. If you first have to do a zamra,
Okay.
because you first have to do a zamra to feel good. Because as he's doing the zamra, he's really feeling that he just wants to let it go.
No, so you should just cry out. If you feel compelled to just cry out, you should just cry out.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Today it was gonna snow.
Let
it go.
It's slightly private, but I want to know anyway. Could you explain when you were in your negative states how Likutei Moharan and connecting with the tzaddik helped you differently or better than going to therapy?
Okay, very good question. Very Ashkenazi question.
Is
Thank you none of my students would answer that question.
Really?
But thank you. It's a good question.
It's important.
Well, yeah, it's good. It's a great question. Beautiful. The question was like this. Can you tell me how it was that Rabbi Nachman, in your darkest, deepest moments, that he helped you more than your therapist? Okay, so this is a very good question. So the answer is like this, and this gets to the ikar of the difference between Rabbi Nachman and anything else. The whole entire basis of the therapist is called Chochmot Chitzoniot. That is secular wisdom. So even though he might have different modalities or different paradigms which are helpful,
Information.
yeah, different ways of thinking that are going to be beneficial to you, they don't necessarily have a root to what's going on. And normally what they want to do is help make you more functional. That if you feel better, they feel like they get a check in their book. If your patterns of thinking are better, you get a check in your book. They're seeing life in a very narrow prism of you're almost like a machine, and we just need to kind of like fix the machinery, and then you're in a better place. But the one thing that you don't get there
Rewiring, yeah.
is this beaming lightning of hope. That every single time that you open up Rabbi Nachman's Torah or you listen to his teachings, you feel that there's hope. I know that for me, and being in some of the places that I've been in, nobody's giving you hope in those places. Nobody. Mamish nobody. And this is the one thing for me that Rabbi Nachman has on everybody. This is tikva, is hope. Rabbi Nachman said, I'm a mikvah. Yeah. And the mikvah, it's called the tikva, the hope of the Jewish people. And I really believe that Rabbi Nachman is the hope of the Jewish people. I just don't know anywhere else that every single time you're going to open up their Torah, you're going to feel like there's hope from it. That's a simple
But you
answer.
could see why someone would go to therapy, or they could do it simultaneous. with
You
it.
could do it simultaneously. It's not going to hurt you. I stopped going to see a therapist because I felt like I got it. I got it from Hashem, and I felt like I got it from Rabbi Nachman's teachings, and I felt like it was enough finally. But it's okay to see a therapist. It's fine.
I would only
I-
go see a therapist to help them with Rahman.
Hey, then,
I believe,
everything.
I believe it, but I don't think that I think usually what they do is, I've never seen myself, a person who went to see a therapist. They can say my therapist is amazing.
Not out of hope, but skills to learn that you're, not.
I believe, and I went to school for it, and like I taught it, and I was a therapist. There's nothing that therapists give over that Rabbi Nachman doesn't give you on steroids. This is my opinion. That's why I, with my help of my friends and students, created Sion. I don't believe that the psychological world is anything on Rabbi Nachman or his teaching. Any other questions? Nothing?
The
I
thing
have
that
a
I
Avi?
statement.
the thing that I said about
You're a tzaddik.
Israel,
Okay. Yeah.
what I meant to say was
I mean,
that
that's
it looks like a
safe.
third world country for a reason.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that there's not a lot of secular
What?
wisdom there. It's
Right. You
more
have to have a
spiritual.
muna.
Right.
You got it.
So that's why that people who go there, people say, what's the point of going there if it's a third world country? You're not gonna make a life out of there.
And it's
not
not
very
a third world
hard.
country.
So that's what people say.
It's a
I know.
first world country.
Yeah.
I think. It's
Yeah.
one of the strongest economies in the
Yeah,
world.
definitely not there.
And there's no government.
That is. Okay, everybody, thank you so much.